Now that we've started to get to know some tools within Python, let's try more. First thing we'll use quite often from now on is this help function. And just as the name indicates, it helps us understand what a certain thing does in what sort of situation. What goes inside help could be a certain data type, function, or anything you may need help with. When you forgot what a certain command does, feel free to use help. We will now move on to one of the fundamental tools in Python, which is function. With functions, we don't have to repeat, and we could extremely shorten our codes. Our example over here gets us the least differences between A, B, and C by calculating the absolute value of each differences and returning its minimum. Let's see the difference between using a function like this and not using a function to do exactly the same stuff. Alright, on the left we can see a lot of repetitive parts where we have to assign values each time we want to know the least differences within a set. On the contrary, we can see that we only have to change the variables that go within the parameters when using dictionaries. This particular example is a very short one, and if the function was a lot more complicated, it would be much better than to write a code each and every time we want to calculate. Oh, and we cannot use help here because it's a function that I made and we made, and it is not built into Python. The Python cannot automatically interpret why I made such a function. For these situations, we use a docstring, which can be made with triple quotes. It is similar to the hashtag we did before. Ones within the triple quotes do no harm, no good, nor good to the codes, and it's only for us to better understand the function of the functions. One thing to note is the difference between return and print. Print just shows us the value. The attribute of a certain value just pops up to the monitor so that we can see it. However, with the return, we can use the return value in other functions or for a calculation and additional processes. The difference between the two may seem very vague and not that important at this point, but later on, as you get to do more programming, you will understand how the two statements act totally differently. On this page, we can see that no value has been printed out. Print does not store any value within the function, and return stores the value. So without return, this sort of situation happens where nothing is left with the functions. Python calculated the answers, but never stored it anywhere, which makes the results none. So we need to use return to store the values that are calculated by Python and use it for later purposes. But here we never returned anything, so it's all gone. We have another function which we named greet. Greet takes in one variable which we named who. What this function does is when it receives a variable who, it prints out hello and the variable. So if we just greet, it just gives us the default, which takes colon as input. And if we change the variable in the who position, we can see that the function prints accordingly. So at first, it is as default. So who is colon, print hello colon. That's the first line. Next, read who equals Campbell. So print hello Campbell. And in this case, there's only a single variable, right? So if there were multiple variables within this function, it would have been hard to determine where a certain variable belongs to. But in this case, there's a single variable within the function, so there is no need to make mistakes. So if we just say greet world, it's going to return hello world. In case there are like more than two variables needed to make a function, let's say greet who equals colon and where equals Paris, then it's going to print out an error indicating that you need more than one variable assigned to this function. But you're going to probably see it in one of the exercises, so let's discuss about that later on. Finally, for this chapter, we'll see how functions work inside other functions. We can see that the call function takes in two variables, fn and arg, which stands for function and argument, and squared call as well, a function and argument. With the call function applies the input function onto the argument, whereas squared call applies the function 2 times on a given argument. So at print, we can see that call returns the result of applying multiply by 5 on 1, and squared call returns the result of applying multiply by 5 2 times on 1, which results in 25. So if we see it from the top, we can see fn and arg respectively are multiplied by 5 and 1. So fn goes here and 1 goes here, which returns multiply by 5, 1. And then squared call, multiply by 5 goes here and here. So 1 gets multiplied by 5 and then multiplied by 5 again, which results in 25. Oh, and by the way, sep equals \n. \n stands for switching lines. So as for like a Microsoft Word, it would be the same as typing enter. And for Python, you need to do \n to do that. So if we just do print out these two without the separation, it would just go 5 and 25. But with the \n, it's going to be 5. And then on the next line, it's going to be 25. The functions can also go inside the built-in functions, and we've already met this function max, which gives us the maximum variable. Actually, there was a hidden variable which could go inside this function, which is called key. And we can find that such variable exists by looking into the max with the help function. Anyways, key returns a variable that is the largest after applying the key function to each variables. In this situation, we can see that mod 5 is returning the remainder when a variable is divided by 5. Here, the remainder of 100 is 0, 51 a 1, and 14 a 4, which makes the max function return 14 as its result. As such, functions could be used to make codes short and may be used along with other functions to carry out complex calculations. And through the examples, let's try using them ourselves.